Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Ames Free Library third Tina? Wine tasting with Tina Kanter, who is a sommelier and one of our favorite people and who has introduced us so lovingly. Our fourth, I think. Debbie's saying fourth.
Fourth, yeah.
Yes, because we did reds, winter reds, sparkling
Fall
wines, and now we're doing rosés. I think last year Tina was telling me about her enthusiasm for rosés. It was a growing enthusiasm, and she talked about how complex they were and how much she loved them. And I think that's when we started thinking about this class. And now that spring is here, why not? I'm really excited to learn what you have to say, and thank you for doing this with us and for us. For those of you who bought wine or have wine with you, you can taste along when we get to that. But there's a lot to learn. Tina is always incredibly informative. So take notes if you have to. But thanks, Tina. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you. For those of you who haven't met before, thank you first off, Marion, for the wonderful introduction. I'm a certified sommelier. I live in Mansfield and I own a local business. I do predominantly work with private clients now, wine tastings and selection for special occasions and events, both live and virtually like this for small groups, and then also for corporate gatherings. I also manage private collections for investments and work with some restaurants on wine lists and seasonal offerings. So I love to talk about wine all day, every day. So if you have any questions, you guys are welcome to reach out to me after this, but hopefully you will have a passion for rosé like I do after this conversation today. And rosé isn't just for the summer, it's for all year round. It is the most complex still wine made. So hopefully we'll get through that. The goal today is for you to be able to answer questions too. It's not intended to be a lecture. It's intended to be a conversation. So feel free to jump in if you want, but we will have plenty of time for questions at the end as well. So whatever makes you feel more comfortable. But let's dig in. Let's talk about rosé. And let's start from the beginning. So what is rosé actually? And it's not just a pink wine that we drink in the summer, like I said. Rosé is a state of mind. It's a sense of relaxation. Rosé actually happens when the skins of red grapes touch wine for only a short period of time. So where some red wines ferment for weeks at a time on red skins, rosé wines are stained red for just a few hours, and in some cases up to 24 to 48 hours. And that's all it takes. The winemaker of a rosé has complete control over the color of the wine, and he removes the red skins when the wine reaches the perfect color. The hue can be determined by the grape variety used and the amount of time it spends on the skins. It has nothing to do with the sweetness level of a rosé. And that's usually the first question I get is, since this rosé is dark, is it sweet? And those two things don't correlate at all. Rosés can really span the color spectrum from pale coral to deep ruby pink. And if you're one of those that ordered all 6 wines, you'll see how magically colorful these wines are, and I'll show them to you as well. Something that does usually track, but with wine, where there's a rule, there's always multiple exceptions. But the color that you see is often a good indicator of whether it's a full or light-bodied rosé. So primarily a darker rosé tends to have more body than a lighter rosé. The primary flavors of rosé wine are red fruit, flowers, citrus, and melon, and sometimes like a pleasant, crunchy green flavor like celery or rhubarb on the finish, which I happen to love. Of course, depending on the type of grape, the rosé wine will vary greatly within those flavor profiles. So red fruit is a very broad category. The type of red fruit is really based on the style or the varietal that's used. There's 3 primary ways to make rosé, and the most common is called the maceration method. That's when the red wine grapes are selected or picked at the optimal level for rosé. So this is intended just for rosé. They're picked a little earlier than red wines to really keep the acidity within the grape. They're then let to rest or macerate in the juice for a period of time afterwards. And then the skins are removed and the entire batch of juice is finished into the rosé wine. So as soon as the winemaker sees that the color is what he or she intended, the skins are removed. The maceration is the most common type of rosé we see available and is used in regions like Provence, Languedoc-Roussillon in France, where the rosé is as important as the red or white. The next most common is called the saignée method or the bled method. And this is used during the first few hours of making a red wine, that is, some of the juice is bled off and put into a new vat to make rosé. And the purpose of bleeding off the juice is not only to make a lovely rosé, but it also concentrates the red wine's intensity. So this is often used for some of those big, bold red wines that you often taste, like Barolos, like Riojas, and some Napa Cabs. Saignés are pretty rare due to the production method, obviously, and often will make up only about 10% or less of a winery's production. This method's more common, as I said, with those big, bold red wines. So if you're not a fan of a traditional rosé, which hopefully by the end of this conversation you will be, you might like that saignée method because it produces a darker, more savory rosé, and we're actually going to taste one today. To break it down, though, the process, the red wine grapes are picked when they're optimal for red wine production. The grapes which is a little riper than with the maceration method. The grapes are then crushed and put into a fermentation vat. And after a short period of time, about 2 hours to 2 days, a portion of juice is bled off. Then the rosé finishes on fermenting on its own, and the red ferments on its own. Some of the saignée method rosés are aged a little bit in oak. Those are ageable, which I think I made up that word, but you understand what I'm saying. Then finally is the blending method, and that produces a really wide range of lighter to heavier wines, depending on what is blended. And the blending method is when you add a little bit of red wine to a vat of white wine to make a rosé. It doesn't take much red wine to dye a white wine pink, so usually these wines have about 5% or so of red wine added. This method is very uncommon with still rosé. In fact, it's not allowed in the EU. However, it is something that's often used in California for some rosés, but for still wines, it's not allowed in the EU. But that's how you make a rosé champagne. Rosé champagne and sparkling is generally a blend of red into white. A great example, I'm going to show you my absolute favorite sparkling Brut Rosé champagne. Billecart Salmon. This is my favorite rosé champagne, and it's primarily, it's not high enough. There you go. Primarily Chardonnay with a smidgen of red Pinot Noir blended in. So those are really the different ways of making them. Let's talk a little bit about my recommendations and wines that I think that you should try this spring and summer. The wine styles that I'm going to recommend to you today, really, it's a broad spectrum. And I'm recommending them really because I feel like they fulfill the categories that are important for you to understand what your favorite style might be. Note that all the rosés that we're going to taste today, with one exception, are going to be either dry or bone dry. And what that means is that all the sugar and the must of the grape has been fermented into alcohol. That means they're not sweet. This is for a simple fact is that we're discussing a little bit more of a sophisticated rosé, but honestly, I won't judge you if you're a fan of a Vino Verde rosé or something from California that has a little bit of residual. You drink what you love, and that's all that matters. But just don't call a white zin a rosé, because if you do, then we can't be friends. So let's talk about the regions we're going to discuss today. We're going to start with Provence, of course. We're going to talk about Tavel. We're going to talk about Austria, the Piedmont region of Italy. We're going to talk about California and Oregon. And then we're going to brush upon South Africa. I really wanted to discuss and taste a South African wine for you, but they are completely sold out right now. And in trying to find the wines to give you guys to taste and to recommend, it didn't make much sense when I couldn't find enough to provide all of you. So I have one, I'm going to show it to you, and hopefully in the future, you'll have the opportunity to taste one. But let's start with Provence, because it's the birthplace of rosé, and it's really where my love affair with rosé began. 88% of the wine production in Provence is dedicated to rosé. And this fascinating region sits right along the Mediterranean coast of France, bordered by the Rhone, and to the west of the Côte d'Azur, with the Rhone River on the west and the Côte d'Azur on the east. I was lucky enough that that's where I summered every year as a child, right in Nice and Monaco. And my memories are sitting right along the water with a bowl of moule marinée with a glass of rosé. Yes, even when I was a kid. My passion for wine started early, but that's neither here nor there. In Provence, they've been making wine for about 2,600 years. So it's actually the oldest wine producing region in France. It's also the only AOC, so major area, that is dedicated to rosé. It's also the only research institute in the world dedicated to rosé. Provence, the geography, climate, altitude, and the historical influences are so diverse that it really only makes sense that Provence is the home to so many grape varieties. Some of them will be familiar to you, some of them not, but many of them are allowed to be used in your glass of rosé. The classic Provence rosé profile is what every serious winemaker around the world attempts to mimic for rosé, and for good reason. The goal is to find this delicate balance between floral, herbal, wild red fruit that's not overly ripe, stone fruit, and acid. That balance makes the perfect glass. There's enticing aromatics of peach and white cherry and wild raspberry, and they're balanced with those summer flowers, white tea, and Provence herbs. Think lavender-strewn fields. Amazing. These delicate flavors carry through to like a creamy finish that really lifts on your palate. And then there's some wet stone minerality to it you'll be able to taste. The wine is in no way heavy or fat on the palate, but rather the palate really has a tremendous length and a mineral core. They're all made by the maceration method, and they're always vinified dry or bone dry. So again, bone dry means there is no more sugar in the must. So we're going to start our tasting today with Saint-Viateur. It's Aix-de-Provence. It's produced actually by the family Bieler. And what's interesting is that this is actually a private label. So this is a great way to get a spectacular bottle of rosé for a more reasonable price. So Aix-de-Provence is usually a very expensive bottle of rosé. And by expensive, I'm saying in rosé terms, about $22 to $25. This one's more accessible because it is a private label. Family Bieler has been producing in the area for a really long time. It's made with Grenache, Syrah, Cinsault, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Roll. Roll is actually the French way of saying Vermentino, very simply. So let's do an active tasting. So when we're drinking rosé, the goal is to drink a glass or to have a bottle that is about 47 to 53 degrees. I know that's really specific, but you want it cold, basically as cold as a white wine. So then we want to swirl. And the reason you want to swirl is because you really want to see how the wine interacts with the glass. And you'll see with this, you'll get some curtains, basically, of wine coming down the glass. And what that means is it's indicative of the alcohol percentage. So when you get a nice curtain with some legs drawing down that run pretty quickly, we're talking about a 13% alcohol, which is nice. The color is called onion skin, which doesn't sound very attractive, but that's the color. And then next we smell, and we get our nose all the way into that glass. And the first thing I get really is honeydew. And I get minerality right off too, like wet stones. And there's some watermelon too, in my opinion. Really nice nose. It's very aromatic. For something that looks so light, it's super aromatic. And then let's taste. That's the fun part, right? You get a wonderful tingle on your tongue right away. It's dancing on the tongue. That dance on your tongue is a level of acidity. This is pretty high in acid, which is excellent. It's got about 13% alcohol, so it's a medium alcohol. It's about medium body. It's got some weight. So the way I often teach body in wine is a light-bodied wine would be like skim milk, and a full-bodied wine would be like whole milk. And then we've got a light to medium and a medium to heavy in the 1% and the 2%. This to me is a good 2%. It's a nice 2%. We get really the same notes on the palate that we tasted. Maybe a little bit more strawberry too on the palate. Really nice. For me, this is a wonderfully delicious summer day sip. You can either drink on your own on a Friday at 5 p.m. on the front porch to celebrate you've made it to the weekend, or with a salad or light pasta. Cold appetizers would do really well with that. So that's our Aix de Provence. This is a very typical Provence rosé. And Aix, as I said, is that sub-region of Provence, which is produces even finer wines, but in the same similar style. The next we're gonna go to and we're gonna talk about is Tavel. And I bet most of you have not heard of Tavel. If any of you have, I would be very impressed. It's in the same basic region, south of France, but this region is infamous. Tavel is situated in the southern end of the Côte d'Aron, across the river from the famous Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which is one of my favorite places in the world. It's got a super long growing season and intense summer, sunny summers, which yield fruit with a lot of ripeness, a lot of concentration, and a lot of richness in sugar. And this is very interesting because Tavel is always vinified dry. So since there's a lot of richness and sugar in the must of the grape and it's vinified dry, that means the alcohol is driven up. The Tavel is the only all rosé appellation in Rhone. And it comes in a lot of hues from light to bright pink, but the one you'll see often is this spectacular rich color. It looks almost like a red wine. These wines have historic reputation, having been favored by King Louis XIV in the 18th century, as well as famous authors like Balzac and Ernest Hemingway. And of course, since it's a library event, I have to throw in some wonderful authors to have a little homage. But this was Hemingway's absolute favorite drink. Tavel was all about rosé before rosé was even cool. It has centuries worth of acclaim. In 1936, when France's AOC system debuted for wine, it was included in the first set of official appellations and was the only one that produced exclusively rosé. So Tavel is a big deal. And the wines are spectacular, but they're very difficult to find. If you see one, snag it. They're very difficult to find. There's only about 40 producers in all of Tavel that produce wines, and they use up to all 9 Rhone varieties, none of which can make up more than 60% of the blend. And what gives the power and complexity to the wine is the required method that prior to fermentation, the juice must be macerated with the grape skins for 12 to 24 hours. And that's why you get that really rich, deep color. It's almost like a red wine. If you like Claret, I know, Mary, you're a fan of Claret. The original claret was actually made in this method. So this drinks like the original style of claret, which is pretty cool. So I'll have to get you a bottle of this Tavel. But so for many people who think that rosé is like a light, simple, not too interesting wine, they haven't tried a Tavel. So let's try it. Let's think about it. Let's actually get our nose in there and try it. It's got this spiciness, which is really spectacular. And we already looked at the color. Always start with looking. We looked at the color. We also know that it's got quite a bit of alcohol because it's totally dry. It should be over 14%. Yeah, 14.5%, which is quite high for a rosé. And the nose is amazing. There's some apricot and strawberry. There's something spicy and savory in there too. And for me, what I love is there's the smell of clean linen. You know, that smell of laundry that's been out on a line, that smell of fresh linen. You get that in this, and I think that's amazing. It's totally bone dry. All right, let's taste it. And when I taste, I take a sip in and I swish it all the way around my mouth because that allows all the taste buds really to be included. And you can feel the depth of flavor, and different parts of your mouth taste different things. This is what a heavy or a full-bodied rosé is like. It fills your whole mouth. It drinks like a red wine in texture. Very, very nice. Great acidity, great minerality. Almost like there's a little bit of salinity on there too, a little saltiness, which is nice. And a little spice on the finish. So that's a fun wine, in my opinion.
Like cooked green pepper.
Yeah, there's like green bell pepper that's been on the grill. You know, that char. That's what I get from it. All right, so now we're gonna move on to Austria. And if you know me well, you know my passion for Austrian wines. We're gonna actually taste an Austrian rosé by the winemaker Schlosskellerei Göbelsburg.
Can you repeat that?
Schlosskellerei Göbelsburg. Michael Moosberger is actually the winemaker, and I've been fortunate enough to meet him and been at the winery on a couple of occasions to taste wines right out of the barrels. The entire winery is biodynamic and organic, minimal intervention, which means they let the grapes grow, they taste them on the vine, and when they're ready, they harvest and produce. There's nothing added to it that doesn't need to be added to it, which is pretty amazing. They've been doing this biodynamism since 1958, which is a good long while. Biodynamics actually originated in Austria. It's a cool climate wine, which is interesting and why this is different. Cool climate wines tend to produce lighter styles that focus a little bit more on pure tart fruit flavors, higher acidity, and usually lower alcohol. And the reason why that's so interesting is I often teach people the cheat sheet of when you buy wine to know when something is dry or sweet. If the alcohol percentage is at 12% or below, it's going to be off dry or potentially sweet. However, here's an exception to the rule. This is 12% alcohol. However, it is bone dry. The fact there wasn't as much sugar in the must of the grape because it's a cool climate grape to begin with. So you get lower alcohol, yet it's still dry. This is a blend of Zweigelt and Saint Laurent, which are both native to Austria, and Pinot Noir, which obviously is originally native to France, but has been growing for a century in Austria as well. So this one is lighter pink in color, which is very interesting. So we're kind of going light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, which wasn't on purpose. It just happened to be how I lined them up. What's really nice, in my opinion, about this is the nose is so zesty. I feel like I'm sticking my nose in a bouquet of fresh flowers into an edible arrangement. That's what it smells like, an edible arrangement. Also, you get those legs. So even though the ABV is low, you get the legs because for it still has a lot of alcohol. And then let's taste it. You get that wonderful dancing on the tongue. You get a little bit of tannin. So it dries out your tongue a little bit while still making your mouth water. And there's a lot of, the minerality on there is more like chalkiness. When you see how the grapes are grown in Austria, they're basically grown in chalk. The soil is actually white like chalk and crumbles. And that comes really through here. It's really elegant in my opinion. And this is really refreshing. This is a great summer drink. Great with salads. I would love this with raw bar as well. Like oysters on half shell or raw clams. Those would be great too. And there's a little bit like a Turkish honey or Turkish nougat on the finish. There's something a little bit richer on the finish as well. So this was also made in the maceration method. And I don't know, I love this. Hopefully you guys love this too. I don't see what your thoughts are, but I think you guys will probably enjoy this one as well. Next, we're going to move on to the Piedmont region of Italy. Another one of my favorites. We're going to try actually the 2012, excuse me, Rosabella, which is from GD Vira. It is really vivid, bright in color, as you see. This is made in this Saignée method that I mentioned originally. So this is one of those ones that's made in the Saignée method. JD Vira has one of the top producing Barolo estates in the Piedmont. They make wonderful Barolo, wonderful Barbera as well. But this is a Saignée off of a Barolo. So as we know, this was bled off the barrel to make the Barolo a little bit richer. They're also organic. They actually got certified in 1971 in organics. And the Vira family still owns the property. They own lots of property through the Piedmont, but specifically in Barolo. And this winery is kind of trailblazing in that they started creating some of wines also from extinct variations of Nebbiolo, which is really cool. Some of those are a little bit harder to find, but they're spectacular when you do. They're very high elevation vineyards, so there's a lot of acid and freshness in the grapes, and there's a lot of finesse in their winemaking. This particular rosé is a blend of Barbera, Nebbiolo, and Dolcetto, made in the Saignée method. So when you get your nose in there, you get one, the darker color is from the Saignée, and two, you get a little bit more like cherry notes, elderflower. You get more notes that you would get from a red wine. So a lot of floral. You get a lot of roses out of a Barolo or a Barbaresco, so you get that here too. Some white peach. I keep getting elderflower. I'm having a hard time getting past the elderflower.
I get the white peach right away.
And there's some strawberry too.
It's like a fruit cocktail.
Yeah. But it may be because my brain is telling me it's from the Barolo region. I must smell truffles. However, I am smelling truffles. So maybe, let's see if we taste it. Maybe I just love truffles and want to taste them all the time. Also crisp and clean, but you can tell that this is age-worthy. It's got some tannins as well. And for those of you that have done red classes with me, know that the balance of acid and tannins is what makes a wine age-worthy. This is really nice. A really long finish. I'd say over a minute finish, which is wonderful in my opinion. I love a long, and it's zippy, lots of acid. Also fruitiness. There's some earthiness. I think I was stretching with the truffle on the nose. I think I was hoping, but there is a little bit of earthiness on the palate. I'm the first to admit when I'm wrong. It's okay.
Yes, dear.
But there's definitely some earthiness to it too, which is what I love. This is a great food rosé. This you can drink for those of you who are meat eaters, with some pork. You can do this with a burger. This can stand up to meat because it's got more of those earthy notes as well. Yet, you know, if you're doing a veggie burger, it would be nice with that as well. This stands up really well. So that's really the select. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we grilled lamb chops.
Yeah.
And this is great with the lamb chops.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, lamb chops nice and gamey. This stands up to it, which is unusual for a rosé to be able to do.
And Tina, we put truffle salt on the lamb, so I'm with you on the truffle right there.
Yeah, I mean, truffle salt goes on everything, by the way.
It does.
Everything.
Except we're in their wine, not in the wine.
Truffle salt was a wonderful invention. So that's really the end of our old world styles. We're going to touch on a couple new worlds. And it's fun, in my opinion, to see the new world because they're stylistically completely different. One also is fascinating is that you can get these old world styles at really accessible everyday drinking prices, whereas new world styles tend to be a lot more expensive. And some of them are great. You have to look for them, but there's a lot of not so great ones. So you really have to know what you're looking for when it comes to New World Rosé. We're going to do one from Oregon and one from California. We're going to start with Oregon, specifically Dundee Hills, which is a sub-appellation of Willamette Valley. Arguably the best sub-appellation of Willamette Valley, but I'm not going to get into that argument right now. But I like Oregon specifically because I think it's a great bridge between Burgundy or the old world and then California, because it takes a lot of the old world styles, but in a California new West Coast climate. Although it's a little bit cooler climate than a lot of California, the terroir is obviously very different than you would get in France. We're drinking something from Maison Noir. I love Maison Noir. I love everything that Maison Noir is about right now. One, it was founded by an iconoclastic sommelier called Andre Mack. He was he was a alum at Per Se, or he is an alum. He was the somm at Per Se and French Laundry. He's also the first African-American master sommelier and went through quite a lot to get there. He is fascinating, and talking to him is incredible. His sense of humor and the way he breaks things down are just amazing. I mean, I aspire to be like him someday. He has since started his own winery in 2007 in Oregon, and he's making some spectacular wines. All of his marketing and all of his labels are completely tongue-in-cheek, as is everything he does. Great sense of humor, and it's an intelligent sense of humor, which I adore. Anyway, his wines, though, are really, really focused. They're unique, they're distinctive, and he calls them garage wines. They're basically micro-négociants. So in France, a lot of the wines are done by négociants, which they go to vineyards and purchase the grapes and then produce the wine. So in a lot of places, the person who grows the grapes is not the person that makes the actual wine. So he actually doesn't grow all the grapes. He doesn't have time to be a farmer as well, but he purchases grapes from very specific vineyards, and he's very clear about where he purchases those grapes. He works with the vignerons and is there during the entire process, and then produces the wines. The wines are all small batches. So this particular rosé, the Love Drunk, which tongue-in-cheek, fun, was only made 125 barrels, which is pretty incredible. And he takes cues from the Champagne region of France. So he uses that blending method. So my goal was for you to taste something that was Saignée, something that was maceration, and this is a blended method, which is, like I said, very unique and very modern for a still wine. Anyway, it's salmon in color, and let's smell it. So it's very different. So New World is very different than Old World. It is all fruit. It's strawberry. It's raspberries. It's watermelon. It's watermelon rind, actually, not necessarily watermelon. And there's like the rain on it, that smell of when it rains on the asphalt, you get that through too. So let's taste.
Ooh, that's like a strawberry, raspberry.
Yeah, it's a dry fruit punchy rosé without being sweet.
But it smells so sweet. It smells so incredibly sweet, but it doesn't taste that way.
Right. There's no, this is vinified totally dry, but it tastes as though it were sweet. It is not, it's dry. It kind of makes your cheeks glow. It's a little earthier. There's not as much acid as we got on the New World. The New World all were dancing on our tongue and were crisp, whereas this one it lays flatter on the tongue. And that is very New World. And then let's try the last one. We'll talk a little bit about it. The last one we're gonna do is California. And this is, I picked a quintessential California one. This is Hogwash. It's by Tuck Beckstoffer. And it's he makes very approachable wines, but he also kind of founded the can wine movement that's going on right now. So that's kind of why I wanted to taste it, because known for his rosés, known for his red wines, that, you know, some of his reds are $400 a bottle. So he's known for that higher end red, but has been producing rosé for years, for about a decade, maybe less than, about 7 years actually. But has started with the can wines as well, which is technically the same rosé in the can, except it is carbonated after the fact, which bothers me, but that's neither here nor there. But what I like about this is it's very approachable. It is for someone who is just getting into wine. It's great for a backyard barbecue where you serve like smoked and sauce slathered ribs, or you have pulled pork with, you know, some sauce in there. You have chicken wings or blue cheeseburgers, you know, something with a lot of flavor. That you want to drink something that's going to drink all right with it, something with some spice or something very tart. This has some residual sugar on it, but it will still stand up. It's really easy drinking. It's lower in alcohol, and this is an example of where lower in alcohol means that there's still sugar left over. So not all the sugar has fermented into alcohol. It's 12%, and when you taste it, you'll be able to taste it. But for me, when I smell, it makes me think of like driving from North Carolina to Florida and stopping in Georgia at a farm stand. And there's like pickled watermelon rind, and there's fresh peaches, and it's all the smells you would get from a roadside farm stand in mid-July. That's what I get out of this. It's 100% Grenache, which is also unusual. Grenache actually doesn't normally stand up on its own. Grenache is normally a blending grape. But here in the US, we like to make it its own thing. So on the nose, you get a lot of grapefruit, which is a New World aroma. You rarely get a grapefruit out of an Old World wine. And you get some like white lily. And for me, and I can identify quickly a white lily because when I first smell a white lily, it smells really good. And as I continue to smell the lily, there's a funkiness to it. I don't know if anybody else recognizes that, but white lilies to me tend to smell like, I don't know, funky after, a little dirty, a little earthy. And then there's some peach. Let's taste it.
Earthiness on the nose.
That's that
Like,
funkiness I get.
Like rubbing your hand through a whole bunch of herbs and seeing that sort of the herb mixture.
So for me, one, it's got some residual sugar on it, but two, the biggest differentiator is that it doesn't have much acidity. So I would call this flabby or fat, which sounds really bad, but it's not intended to sound bad. It just means that it's not crisp. It's not tart. It's a little bit, it's more like it's juicier. There's some honey notes on there too.
Honey or honeysuckle. I get honey.
I get honey, like honey notes when honey, that it has almost that not rancid. I don't want to say rancid because that sounds bad, but think of rancid in a good way. It has that note that it's kind of not super pleasant yet, but still you love the smell of it. That's a note I get out of there. And I don't intend to leave a bad note on that because it's nice. Again, it's a great backyard barbecue wine. So that's what I've got for wines for tasting today. I can also show you a couple other wines that I absolutely love that I haven't had the opportunity to taste because we went through a lot today and I don't like to bombard you with too much information. But I want to open it up for questions. And then if you guys have any questions or want to see some of the other wines that I suggest, please let me know. You can either jump in, you can use the chat, whatever you want.
Okay.
Hi, Tina. Brett here.
Hi.
Hey, so interested in your opinion on Whispering Angels.
That is an excellent question. It's almost like I threw you a softball, but you didn't even know.
I just had to do it.
Whispering Angel is interesting. So quite honestly, it drinks just fine. And 5 years ago, I would have picked it up and bought it because it was at $14.99. And it, as I said, it drinks like a Provence rosé. However, as soon as it was picked up by the Real Housewives and was at Summer House, where they poured it into a swimming pool and drank it out of a straw, that's when the marketing and the social media made it blow up. And now they spend about 60% of their revenue on marketing. And that has driven the price up to almost double the original price. So at $14.99, I would say go buy it and drink it. At $27.99, I would say there's a lot better rosés out there. Hopefully that answers your question. But I will say, usually on the shelf next to it in a good wine location is the Parasol. This is my absolute favorite rosé of all time. In fact, I've loved this for decades. It's consistently good. It drinks, in my opinion, better than Whispering Angel and costs considerably less. So this is a great option for a beautiful drink. It's about 22 bucks now, whereas Whispering Angel's on the shelf about 27 bucks. And it is hands down consistently always fantastic.
I think the thing that surprised me about Whispering Angel is that it's French.
Right. Well, it's Provence, but it's made for the U.S. marketplace. So that's why there's an English name. It's only for export.
Right. They even have a Whispering Rock now or something. They're marketing it weird.
Well, they also have the Palm. There's some that they have a couple that they're marketing to millennials and then, sub millennials. So it's now owned by a marketing company and not by a winemaker. And usually when that happens, it's time to move on.
Good.
Thank you.
Nope.
Tina, can you age rosés?
You can age a Saunier rosé and you can age a Tavel. So a Tavel you can actually age for about a decade. I've never done that and I probably should, but you can age a Tavel for about a decade. So this one. A Saunier you can age probably for 3 to 5 years, but rosé is meant to be consumed fresh. So usually like the 2020 is what's out now and the 2019s are really good. So I often like a fresh rosé, but some I like the following year. So 2019s and 2020s are out there. Some 2019s I think have a little bit more body. They do really well in the bottle. And then 2020s, anything that's 2017, 20, depends on the quality level, 2018, I think isn't at peak any longer. So generally you want to drink a rosé fresh. A Parasol, I have a bunch of Parasol at 2019. The Saint Ventura and the Bieler family, all their 2019s are drinking beautifully this year. So a lot of those are really good. Also, the Austrians tend to be a year later too. So all the Austrians out now are 2019s. I have a question.
Why?
There was a question in chat for you. Why
Yes.
are the blended rosés banned in the EU?
So it's not that they were banned in the EU, they were never allowed in the EU. So they were just a method used for champagne. So the original way of making rosé was the maceration and the saignée, and those were the two that were allowed for still. And then it's very rare that there are updates to the laws. So there hasn't been any sort of update. So nothing's been banned in this regard. It's just never been allowed. And that's actually, just to say, that's in order to get certificate, like to be allowed to be certified, have AOC labeling. That's not to say that someone's not allowed to put out a wine. You just can't have any labeling that it's certified by any sort of appellation. You're welcome.
Tina, can I ask a quick, I'm deeply
You
intrigued
can ask
by
any question.
the Tavel.
Yeah.
Tavel.
Is it hard to get? I mean, can you get it, for example, at Whole Foods?
You can, because I love them, so I've ordered them in. But they're in limited quantity. So I basically ordered all that the distributor had. So once they're gone, they're gone.
So,
Yes, currently I can get them for you.
okay. And are they expensive or?
They are not. So this one it's $15 for this one.
Oh, okay.
It's not expensive. There are Tavello there that, as I said, this is one of the ones that age. They can go up to $200.
All right.
They can be the most expensive rosé out there because they're age worthy. I think there's an Ernest Hemingway one out there actually that was from his cellar that sold on Sotheby's last year. And it sold for like $50,000 or something like that.
I'm sure everybody saw the documentary for 6 hours.
Right.
Someone was asking, did you order the Rosabella?
Yes. Yep. It's
Um,
also in limited quantity though. I think I have 12 bottles left.
So for those of you who don't know, Tina works at Whole Foods occasionally, and she is a wonderful resource. And if you go visit, I know I visit you on Friday mornings usually, but maybe there's another morning you're around.
Yeah,
you
I'm
can-
actually no longer there Friday mornings because I'm focusing on private events on Fridays. So
Oh.
I'm there I do all the buying of the high-end wines and the unique wines for the Dedham location. And I'm there on Wednesday mornings and Sundays.
Okay.
So you're welcome to come see me.
Yeah, it's a great, I just want to highly recommend this because she really knows her wines, and you get a good tour of what she has, and it has a really good selection. And Tina has turned a whole lot of us onto some great wines. So you should visit her there if you want a more personalized tour of the
Of
collection.
the wine selection.
Yeah. Definitely. We didn't all taste the same wines here.
You did not taste the same wines because because I want everybody to talk about them. So I try to mix them up. I gave everybody a Provence.
Yeah.
Because that's the grandmother, whatever you want to say, of
Granddaddy.
wine, of rosé wine. So everybody needed to try that. And then I mixed up the second, third, and there's quite a few people, there's a few people that got all 6.
Hey, Tina, we got a South African wine.
Yes. So yes, I love the South African wine, and I sent you on a scavenger hunt to find a South African wine. And I have a South African wine. And then as I tried to collect them for other people, they are no longer available anywhere. There's been a mad rush on South African. However, they're fantastic. And what's cool about South African wines is that usually the blend contains pinotage. You have the beach house, right?
I don't know. Ours is the goofiest, like Whispering Angel type label.
Yeah, they actually produce a Sauvignon Blanc like that too. It looks exactly the same.
Okay.
But quite honestly, they're really that one and this, they're under $10 and they drink super well. That's why I wanted to show them off, because they drink super well. But usually one of the lead grapes is pinotage. And pinotage is this weird cross between Pinot Noir and Cinsault, which is called Hermitage in France. but Cinsault everywhere else in the world. And so Pinotage is a cross between those two grapes, a natural cross. And it grows like wildfire in South Africa. And it has this really unique, and again, I'm going to use terminology for the way I feel like it tastes. And please take it in I mean it in the most wonderful way, but it's very gamey. It tastes like game meat often. And because there's a lot of iron in the soil, excuse me. There's a lot of iron so there's a little soul in the wine too. That iron kind of comes through and it makes the wines gamey. And it's this really cool, funky, earthy gaminess, which I love in the reds. And somehow that comes out in this delicate rosé. So you get this delicate, fruit-forward, gentle rosé with like gaminess on it. And that probably goes really well with your lamb too. It's something that I would pair with because it's got that gaminess. So if you can find a South African red, or I mean the Chenin Blancs are South Africa are great too. But in terms of this rosé and the Pinotage, it's very cool. And I'm sorry that I wasn't able to give them to you guys, but that's why I kind of passed over it because I was intending on talking about it.
This one also finishes with the Turkish delight flavor you were referencing.
Like the nougat. What's the alcohol? The ABV is at 12 or 12 and a half?
Oh gosh.
So it's a cool climate. So South Africa is also a cool climate area. There should be some salinity on there too. There's a big diurnal difference in temperature, which means it's really hot during the day and really cold at night, which is great for grapes.
Yeah.
So it's probably about 12%.
Yeah, it's 12 and a half.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good. What for those of you who tasted, what was your favorite? And did you like them? I know some people are like, oh, I don't really love rosé. Hopefully I turned a lot of you into rosé lovers.
I liked the French, the de Provence.
You
How do
did?
say
Good.
it? I thought it was delicious.
Good.
I only got two. I got the Piedmont and I thought the French one really had a strong, I don't know, minerality, gaminess. I don't know what you would say. I wanted something with salinity, but I didn't get that. But I'm going to pursue you for the Tavel.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
how about other people? What did you like?
I like the French wine as well. It was delicious. Lots of fruity flavors, the peach and the watermelon, and there is a minerality to it. It's delicious. I was very impressed.
Yes. So Provence is known for their spectacular minerality. It's something that their rosés are really unique for having. So I'm glad you guys both pulled that out.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share?
Any other questions at all?
I have one last question. Sorry, I just couldn't help it.
You can ask as many as you want.
So you talked about cool weather wines.
Yes.
At what point do you cross over into the ice wines, which are like really cool weather wines?
So that's a good question. Ice wine is a very specific style of wine, and ice wine means that the grapes have actually frozen on the vine. So when the grapes freeze on the vine, and that's when they become ice wine, because then the sugar really gets very concentrated.
Huh.
And then when you can vinify them. Well, when you vinify them, one, they'll be sweet, but also they'll still have that acidity. The alcohol level can be high or low. It's not super low because even though it's still sweet, there's still so much sugar that it's able to vinify to a higher alcohol percentage. Does that make sense? So ice wines can be really cool, both from Germany and Austria, which make amazing ones. But Vermont is making some really cool ice wines right now too. And then Niagara is known for them as well.
Yeah, we went to some vineyards up there in Niagara, and interesting.
Yeah, it's very different. So if you like, I know you guys like Sauternes. that
Mhm.
have that sweetness, but still some acidity. The ice wines will have a little bit less acidity, but it's still that interesting balance of not being too sweet.
Yeah, it's not the same as the Royal Rot or whatever the Sauterne is.
Noble rot.
The noble rot, yes.
Noble Rot.
Yes. And I have some, I bought futures and some sauternes, so I'm still waiting for those to come.
Stuart Dew, who is, I presume, with Amanda's Dew, wanted to know if there are any local rosés. Stuart, I hope I understand your question. Any local rosés?
So
for
I know
example?
that the what's it called?
Shoba.
The Newport
Ah.
wineries makes a rosé. It is pretty sweet. It is not, I would say it's a step past off dry. It's pretty sweet. So it's not really to my taste. What other, I mean, it depends on how far you consider local. So there are Finger Lakes. If you're considering Finger Lakes local, if I can extend it that far, there are some rosés from the Finger Lakes made with Cab Franc. And those are the only ones I can think of. There's Maryland right now with the Westminster, which is a rosé out of Maryland. I know I'm, drawing the boundaries pretty wide here to consider them local, but they're on this coast. Those are really the only ones that I've had so far. Yeah, the Westminster is from Maryland. And that's pretty good. It's got a little bit of that Jolly Rancher note on the front, even though it's dry. So you take a sip and then you get, for me, the note is Jolly Rancher first, and then you get the kind of the strawberry and the acid after that, and it's dry, but yeah. I'm definitely an old world drinker, and I don't want to be too skewed, but
Yeah.
So he was talking.
Charlottesville. So I don't know of a specific rosé of from Charlottesville. However, I will be more than happy to do some research and get back to you and get you some information on some good rosés from that area. And good job for stumping me. I love to be stumped. Yeah. But I will definitely get back to you. Give me tomorrow and I'll get back to you with some good information on rosés from Charlottesville.
That's Christine. She got all the books she wanted.
So there are a lot of wineries down there, but I don't know who makes a great rosé. There's a lot on Long Island too, but there's very few that make like a really solid rosé that I love. I mean, Hampton Water is okay. Summer Water is okay. There's a bunch from Long Island. A lot of them have labels from like famous people or reality housewives style wines. Bon Jovi's son makes, I think it makes Hampton Water. It's not terrible. But it is definitely on the less acidic side, and it's got some residual sugar. So as I said to begin with, I'm not going to judge you if you are someone that loves residual sugar on your rosé. But at the same time, don't judge me for not liking residual sugar on my rosé. I like it really crisp and lean, bone dry. But when I drink red, I also like to have like no saliva left in my mouth. I like it that tannic. So I will admit.
Tina, how do we follow up with this? So not everybody got the labels that you flashed in front of
Okay.
them. And it would
What
be
I will
so
do
nice-
is I can send a list of everything that I tasted here. And then everybody, if you have any further questions, everybody should have my email address. And you guys can reach out to me anytime.
Great.
Do you want to what is your email address? I should have it.
I will type, oh, Mark's typing it in there.
Okay.
So sorry, my husband's on here.
Who's that? Mark? No.
Yes, Mark.
Oh, Mark, lucky guy, huh? You guys are newlyweds, really.
Yes. Well, almost not anymore, right?
That's funny. And Tina, can I just ask, what is your absolute hands down favorite rosé that is just wait till I qualify it available? that we can just find. Parasol. Okay.
Parasol.
Parasol.
I do not even have to think about it. This is for decades my favorite.
Okay. All right. Good. Parasol. And that's available.
It's available widely.
Parasol. Okay. Okay. So yeah, we can write that in the chat as well. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect.
I know when you see it, I think you see it in mirror image, so
Yeah.
it's hard to. But I can send out a list of all the wines that we tasted today. I also, this one I was debating about. I wanted to really show it to you guys too. It's a Slovenian. It's not. Yes, my daughter's name is Anna. That's not why. It is a fantastic Slovenian rosé. This is really good. There's a Greek rosé called Zoe too, which is funny, which is my other daughter's name, which is very good too. But it just happens that.
Our daughter.
I'm gonna write it in the chat.
Yes, it's no big surprise that there's wines with my daughter's names on them.
Thank you.
And the only other one that I would say to try is a Rhone, another Rhone. This is very good as well. The Côte de Rhone, that's very good as well. So we just didn't have enough time to try all that many. And if you've got 600 wines that you want to taste, you can't open them all at one night. So.
Well, we really will have to do this in person one of
Yes.
these days.
Yes.
That would be great because we can all do it. And thank you, Tina. Thank you. I don't know what time it is, but I just wanted to say thanks. It's been really interesting and fun for all of us, I think.
My pleasure. My favorite thing to do is to talk to people at wine. So
I know. It is fun to talk about and to taste and to think about as a balance to other things we have to think about. So
exactly.
thank you so much. It's really great. Any other questions for Tina, or this is the last chance for Tina, but you can always get in touch with Tina. She's incredibly available, incredibly professional, quick to get back to you. It's wonderful. So if there are any last questions, please speak.
I have one very quick question. Where is the wine producing region in South Africa?
So there's actually several wine producing areas in South Africa. This particular one, where is this one? Doesn't even say. I mean, this Stellenbosch, hands down, is where most wines come from. But there are more areas as well that are smaller producing. But I'd say if you take 99% of or 90% of the wines on the marketplace from South Africa, they're from Stellenbosch.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ours happens to say Western Cape.
Oh,
Yes,
That works as well. I think Stellenbosch is on the Cape.
it is. It's just north of Western.
Stellenbosch is on the Cape.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, tested my South African geography there. I was right.
great.
Thank you.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Tina. And this is this is summer. This is summer wine.
This is, I mean, it doesn't have to be summer wine,
Yeah.
but it's a nice summer wine. I mean, when it hits 5:30 on a Friday night, we're sitting on our porch with a glass of rosé.
That's great.
A barbecue in the summer on Saturday and
Yeah.
Sunday.
And again, I just want to reiterate, it's really fun to go visit Tina in her element. So please go visit her at Whole Foods on Sunday.
Yes.
I have to switch my Fridays, but thank
I
you.
know, I'm sorry. I
I
gotta
know.
focus on like real stuff now.
Yeah.
It's fun, but
Yeah.
the world's opening back up again, so.
Yep. Yep. Thank you everyone for coming. Thanks to Tina for giving us such a great presentation and the wines that we drank. I don't know what, 15% alcohol. Yeah.
Well, I have
just-
all 6 open, so.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, thank you. And we'll look
Thank you.
forward to another iteration of this. Maybe it will be in person.
Hopefully.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Good
Bye,
night, everybody.
everybody. Bye. Thank you.